Hello and thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and joining me in studio today are two of our panelists to talk about all things gardening. Let's have them introduce themselves and tell you a little bit more about them before we jump in with questions and show and tell. So, Jim, we'll start with you.
I'm an entomologist, a retired entomologist from the Illinois Natural History Survey. So I deal with the insects and mites attacking trees, shrubs, and flowers.
All right, and John.
And I'm John Bodenstein. I'm a Vermilion County Master Gardener, and I enjoy doing, if it's a plant, I enjoy it, and that's all I'll say.
Okay, so we've got some generalists on the panel today. So the first thing we're going to do, Jim's going to talk about birds. We're slowly getting into the winter months where our flying friends could use some help outside. So Jim's going to talk to us a little bit about how to feed the birds and what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with bird feeders is that you have the problem with raccoons and squirrels. A long time ago, I solved my squirrel problem by putting a very thin, strong line of wire between two posts. And that worked for a while. And then the feeder was in the center of the wire. But what happened at night, the raccoons would go down and they'd hold on to
my gosh.
Like
monkey bars?
Like monkey bar. All the way.
Wow.
So that didn't work out for this in preventing the damage.
You get a big raccoon, they probably tear the line
Yes,
apart.
Oh, they did. They just tore it apart. So that's always been a problem. So what I found out is using a PVC pipe as a base for the feeders. And if we could show that photograph of there it is there. That's really worked well. I've not had any problems. And we got the directions, so Tanisha, you said that would be the directions on how to build this?
Yes, we're going to post those on our social media, so you can find those on our Facebook and Instagram. He left some wonderful instructions about how to make one of these critter-proof feeders.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, very nice. You don't have to bother with the raccoons and the squirrels. I mean, it's really, really pretty nice that I've been able to do that. And you can put shelf racks on, and you can put the feeders hanging from, like I showed it here in the photograph. You got to do that. So it really works out really very well.
Okay, and you've got another photograph that you wanted to show. Did you want to do that one now, or?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
And this is in the summertime when you have grape jelly and jam. And like John and I were discussing, these birds are very particular. They like the expensive grape jam and jelly. They don't like the store brand. Because I gave them a test one time. I had 2 containers of jam that I got from the store brand, and then 2 of the expensive, places, and they downed the expensive jam and jelly right away.
They've got a refined palate, huh?
They really do. So now my birds get all the expensive kind, but
aren't those special birds?
Yeah, they are. So that really works out well. A PVC pipe, and if you follow those directions, and it's very simple.
Okay, and we'll get those posted to, again, our Facebook and our Instagram so that you can have access to those. All right, John, you've got a lot of stuff to show, but you want to start with the ginger?
Sure. I like growing ginger. I like to cook, so I like fresh, good ginger. And this is what you usually find at the grocery store. And you can grow your own. You're going to only end up probably with what they call baby ginger, which is not near as strong as what this is. This is a mature ginger plant. But if you look at certain parts of the ginger, like right here, there's a little white knob coming out of it. And that is the new shoot that's going to form into the plant. And what you want to do is say, this is the soil. You're going to kind of do it like irises. You're going to just lay it on the ground and bury it about 3/4 of the way. You can, it varies, just so that you can see parts of it outside of the ground. You want to use good soil, potting soil, because you're going to be digging these up eventually and moving them. So you don't want hard old soil. You want good draining soil. They don't like they'll rot if you get the soil too wet. But I did bring a ginger plant here, this is one that I've been growing, and you can see in the soil,
There you go.
the ginger starting to work out of the ground already. So, like I said, it takes about 14 months to get something like this, and we don't have. They are tender. You have to bring them in. They will not survive freezing temperature or anything like that. It's a tropical plant, and but.
So does
fun.
this just serve in your house as a house plant, you know, and then you just come over and take a chunk off?
It just yeah, you can just take a chunk off and you don't have to harvest the whole thing. And it, like I say, this is baby ginger. It's going to be much milder, not as, tart as, that bite that sometimes ginger gives you. But it still gives you that ginger, and it makes good ginger beer and ginger ale and that type of thing.
Always in the kitchen. Always in the
I'm going to
kitchen.
visit your place.
Don't you? He's always making dips and jams and
But
jellies
anyway,
and
it's fun. It's just something if I can, so I do.
yeah, I like it. I like it. And can you eat the foliage?
I've
You
never
haven't?
tried. No, I don't believe
Just
that
curious.
that's.
Now I know what I did wrong. I tried to plant mine. First, I don't even know if I got a good one because
probably
I don't
planted
know
it
if
like
I
this
did.
rather
And it
than
was too
this.
wet.
Yeah.
It was too wet.
too wet.
Yeah,
It rotted
you want to have a
immediately.
good draining soil and a hole in the bottom of the pot, so that the water does not. It will just rot.
It did too, and it smelled,
Oh
and
yeah,
it was just a bad scene.
It's not something that you'd want to eat or drink.
No way. Okay, excellent. Thank you. All right, Jim, we're going to go back to you. We're going to do question 74. This is about spider mites. This is from Margaret in Lincoln. She writes in, I have some house plants that have been outside all summer and have spiders in them. Can I use a fungicide or fungicide 3 on them to get rid of them before bringing them in? Also, can I trim my twice blooming lilac bush this fall? So, want to tackle
Well,
the spider mites?
Yeah, why don't we just show that table of that? Now, Bonide is the trade name, and the company makes this mixture called Mite X, and it contains cottonseed, cottonseed oils, and clove and garlic oils. And I think if you use that and just follow the directions on the label, that would be controlling the spider mites on indoor plants.
What about neem? You hear a lot of people talking about diluting neem and putting it in a
I'm
spray
not
bottle.
sure if that has approved for household use. So
Okay.
that's the problem. I mean, that's why I like Bonide Company, because it has all these products that the homeowner can use indoors.
Neem has a pretty strong fragrance to it.
It
so
does.
so I prefer not to use that indoors either. So.
Okay. And then for the second part of the question, and John, feel free.
And John can answer that one, I'm sure.
I mean, we're a little bit past this, but they were asking about trimming back the lilac bush.
It's a twice blooming.
Yes.
So, they always say to trim your flowering plants right after they flower. The problem with this is that it blooms twice. So I would trim it after the fall blooming to shape it, get rid of any damaged, and then, because you're still going to lose some flowers. But just remember, just do minimal. If you have to do some major trimming, if you've let it grow for many years, you are going to lose a year's worth of flowers. But that's a sacrifice you have to make if you haven't kept it up. So
Okay. All right. So we're back to you, John. You were out in the yard, and you brought in several things from the yard too.
Well, this one here isn't from my yard, but I wanted to talk about this today because this is the season.
We're seeing them in stores.
So this is a Thanksgiving cactus, and I brought this printout. You can see the top photo is the Thanksgiving cactus. You can see the little sharp ears on there, and that's how you can tell it's a Thanksgiving cactus. The second one here, this is the Christmas cactus, and it still has the little ears, but they're kind of rounded off. They're not sharp like the Christmas cactus. The bottom one is a Easter cactus. It has no ears at all, and that's how you kind of tell them apart. They all flower according to the number of hours of light. That is the stimulating amount. And there's multiple colors. There's white, there's orange, there's red, there's pink. This is one that is, and another nice thing, we broke this off, and the nice thing is you don't throw these away. What you do is take it apart, and now you do plant it. Say this is the soil level, about like right there. And again, in good drained soil, I like to start mine in sand because you can get the sand nice and close to the leaf, and it makes contact with it. And within a month, you're going to have new growth showing, and you'll have roots at no time in no time at all. Sometimes, in fact, this one here, if you really focus on this, right at the bend, you can see those little hairs. That's actually that's the new roots that would form. So never throw, if you break one off, some of these can be hundreds of years old. I know we've got one that is from my wife's great-great-grandmother.
Oh my gosh.
And it's mine, I've left mine and it got too wet and it rotted, but my daughter, I had given her a slip and she had it. So I've got a slip from her slip that got from my slip that got from
It just keeps
Bonnie's.
getting passed around.
It's just, you can keep, and so it's still, it's a clone of that original plant. So it's just something that is very, very nice.
So you still have a piece of the, or not, do you still have the original one from your great?
No. That was at my wife's mom. I think she might still have it.
Wow, that's incredible. Excellent. Okay. All right, Jim, we are back to you. Let's talk fungus gnats, because another perfect time of year. And we've answered this question, but I like to leave it on the list because each of you do something a little bit different. We've got some panelists who don't mind using, more integrated pest management. We have some who want no chemicals. So I like to get a variety of answers. So here's the question. This is from Elaine. Earlier this year, you addressed the problem of small flying insects that originated from the soil of houseplants. There was a product mentioned and even shown that looked like a sticky strip that could be tucked into the soil. Tell me more. So how do you deal with fungus gnats?
Well, there is a product, and it's made by Safer. Safer is the trade name, so Safer Sticky Stakes, it's called. And you can just put this around. Now, that will control the adult fungus gnats.
Okay.
What the problem is that you want to control the larvae, the maggots in the soil, because they're the ones that can cause damage to household plants. And the adults are simply sort of a nuisance problem. So you can actually can make your own sticky traps. Just use Vaseline on some stakes, and when the adult flies land on the stake, they'll get trapped. You can also use cider vinegar. They really like cider vinegar. You can put those in shallow bowls, and that will attract the flies, and they'll drown in that. And then the Bonide makes a systemic chemical that you can apply to the soil. Now, you got to be very careful with these systemics because, you don't want to put that on any edible plant because it contains the systemic. But that is one that will control the larvae or the maggots feeding in the soil. Normally, the fungus gnat maggot, it won't cause that much damage if the population is low. But when it gets high, they can feed on the root hairs of plants, and the plant will become very, very stunted. So if you have that problem with stunted plants and plants that don't flower, and you have fungus gnats, you might want to go with that Bonide systemic chemical, and that does have label approval for indoor use.
I have a question. So if you've got something, let's say you've got a young fruit tree that does have fungus gnats, the tree will not be mature enough to produce fruit for 4 or 5 years. Can you use a systemic on that since you won't be having, you won't be harvesting fruit for a while? How long is that in the system of the plant?
Well, I think it's in there for certainly a couple months for sure. But I really don't think the fungus gnat's a problem outside, though. It's the indoor
Well,
plants.
I was thinking like a small ornament, like an indoor lemon tree.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Something
yeah.
that you would eventually eat the fruit from, but it was inside.
I would definitely not eat the fruit.
If you look at the label, it's going
to,
it's illegal to use any product on a plant that's not listed on the label.
Got it.
Because they are liable for if there's any damage, and so they've actually passed laws saying use it exactly, not only just what it should be used on, but also the strength and when, and there's all kinds of precautions, and you need to read that label and follow it completely. One of the other things I like to do that, Jim, I'd like to get the yellow pieces of paper, and you can go to any garden center and get yellow sticky paper. I just hang them where I have my plants, and I monitor that. If all of a sudden I'm seeing something on there, then I'll investigate, because you don't want to let it go to the point where it's been going for a month or 2 months, and then all of a sudden you wiggle the plant and you see them. You want to have, because they'll get on there and they will stick. The other thing that I like to do is, if I do find them, I bottom water, because you want that top layer, that top inch or two of soil to be dry.
Okay.
So yes, the water will wick up depending on the type of soil you have. You want good, again, the secret is having good soil. Bottom water it. Another thing I like to do on the very top of my soil is put some vermiculite. It tends to dry out a little bit more, and if the adults land on that, I put a 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch of vermiculite. They tend not to lay their eggs there because they figure it's too dry for them.
It's too dry.
So
The only thing I have to mention with these sticky traps is if you have a cat or a dog,
oh yeah.
you've got to be very careful.
Karen mentioned that her cat would get stuck in one, and then the cat would have like a complete nervous breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
And she's trying to chase the cat, and the cat's running from her, and it was just a nightmare. So good point there.
Yeah.
And is there something about letting the soil sort of dry out?
Yes, yeah, you always want to let it dry out, that top part especially. But anytime you buy a plant, you might take it out of the pot and look at the bottom, because that's where you might see some, if you see any larvae or anything like that, it's probably could be fungus gnats, and I would set that plant back and not
Put that one right back where you found it.
not take that home, because you're just asking for a problem. Anytime you find an insect on a plant, there's probably babies that you don't see, eggs, and you just leave that plant alone.
Okay. All right. Whatever your
okay.
yard discoveries.
Yes.
You took a cool walk outside.
Yes. This is beautyberry, and it went through a couple of frosts here, so it's not as vibrant. It was just fluorescent purple, and it just was beautiful. It still is, and the birds do like to eat on this. It does spread. It gets to be about 5 feet tall. I've had one now for about 10 years, and it just keeps bushing out, getting a little bit bigger. And it has very small, delicate flowers in the spring, has nice leaf structure, nice flowing structure. But this is called beautyberry.
Beautyberry.
And it's just not showing up quite, well, it's dull right now compared to what it was.
It's still a pretty purple color, though.
Well, John, you convinced me. This spring I'm going to have to get a beautyberry.
Okay, if I can, I'll break off a plant and get you some.
Well, make sure you call me and DJ so we can record it.
So the other thing, right now, is we've had some frosts, and most of the leaves on the tree are off. This is oriental or bush honeysuckle. And as you can see, I just picked this morning.
And it looks like it's thriving.
It's still got all its leaves, and you can see even it's got the red berries. That's another telltale sign. And
and the birds love these berries, and when they defecate, they spread the seeds everywhere.
And they tend, the acid in their stomach, what is that called? Sclerify it.
Yeah.
And so every seed grows.
Every seed grows.
So another way to tell on what it is, if you look at the bottom stem, you can see it's hollow. So if you're wondering, I've got this tree, just cut a piece off, and it's got that hollow little.
The hollow tip there. I remember we were talking with an environmentalist, and she said that the berries on honeysuckle are like junk food for birds.
Yeah.
And they just eat it, and it doesn't have a whole lot of nutritional value.
And this is the same thing. This they'll eat it, need it. It'll depend on which end it comes out of. Sometimes they'll just throw it up. Sometimes it'll pass through. They'll if they haven't eaten a lot of it. But there's very little nutritional value to this. But it does have some moisture, and so they will eat it.
And every seed that comes out.
Every single seed that comes out.
It's just absolutely
it's
horrible plant.
And the reason for that is because, as you can see, this is still got its leaves on. All the fall plants that were underneath this were starved for sunlight. Come spring, this is going to be the very first one to leaf out again. And so anything
shade all
that's
of those.
all the natives underneath, it's going to shade those out. So this is going to eventually take over the whole hillside. I've cut out. I hadn't done it, and I didn't realize what I had, but I think I've taken out 500
Oh my
plants.
gosh.
Yeah.
Do you have a lot of honeysuckle
Oh,
on your
yes.
property as well?
Exact same thing, John. It's just a terrible
until
plant.
everybody gets rid of it, we're going to continue because the birds are, especially the mature ones, have the seeds. Not all, the small ones aren't going to have the seeds, but the mature ones are. So, just
the other thing is that when I've harvested these things, got rid of them, and actually, if you cut it off and lay it on the ground, the thing will sprout.
it will. It'll actually.
It will sprout.
It's like
So
air
you gotta,
layering onto the
you gotta
ground.
let it dry and then burn it to
Okay.
get rid of it. It's a horrible
Yeah.
plant.
Wow.
So there's a number of them that we have in our area, and this is probably the worst of all.
Oh, it's
of
the
them.
worst, I think, by far the
So
worst.
now, if you want to clean up your yard, now's the time. Even if you just go out with some red ribbon, if it's too cold for you, go out with a ribbon and tie it around
Just remember.
so that you know what is what, and then you can
Get
rip
rid of
up.
it when
If
it's a
you
little
get it-
warmer.
If you get it when it's only about that tall, it just pulls out real easy because it is a shallow rooted plant when it's small. Once they get to, I'd say an inch, you're going to need a shovel or something to take it
Yikes.
out.
Okay.
And you need to get it all out because if you leave any part of that root, like Jim says, it's going to come
It'll
back.
sprout.
I mean,
Yikes.
it's a plant that's almost willing to, go through all kinds of, you just can't get rid of it. It's
Wow.
such a horrible plant.
So, but now is the time to, now in early spring, when everything else, before everything else has leafed out, this is the time to look for this and get rid of it.
All right. And you've got another stick there?
Yes, I just brought this because I knew Jim was interested in birds and insects. And this is a Mexican sunflower. And as you can see, the inside is like a hard marshmallow. And some of your wasps and things
definitely.
love this type of, and I'll let you continue.
Well, I mean, you can just make your own out of, little hollow stakes or something
Yeah.
like that. There are like that.
That little bamboo and
bamboo.
grass, any of the grasses that have that soft interior.
So do you not cut down
No.
for that reason?
Right, because a lot of people do too much cleanup in the fall, or they take everything and burn it. If we can just wait and let those beneficial insects, most of them are beneficial. Yeah, we have those that will do this that are bad insects, but most of them are beneficial.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And so we're finding that even the leaf matter, everybody likes to rake up every leaf. I
Yes.
leave some areas where the beneficial insects, that's where they overwinter. And so if we can maybe not be tidy
Not quite so tiny.
and just let a few things grow, will be much, much better.
And too many gardeners are so tidy,
We need to be messy gardeners.
We need
and
to
just
be
kind of
messy
let the
gardeners.
insects
Right, I
overwinter.
totally
We've got
agree.
about 2 minutes
Okay.
left. Do you need to
The
get some?
pawpaw,
Oh yes, we've got to get to the pawpaw.
the
So
pawpaw. Somebody had a question on a
yes,
pawpaw.
Yolanda Shields wrote in, and she said that John spoke about the pawpaw. She wants to know where she can get a tree. And do you have some information for
Yes,
her?
I looked at Arbor Day Foundation. If you belong to Arbor Day, they offer them. Stark Brothers,
Okay.
which is a very reputable, they even called me one time. I ordered some stuff, and they called me about 6 months later. Did all your trees live? Because if not, we're gonna send you some new ones.
Oh wow!
So
Gotta love
Stark
customer
Brothers,
service.
Gurney's is another one. White Hill is another. So if you just go on the internet, so Arbor Day, Stark Brothers, Gurney, or White Hill, and some of them are offering now to put microniza on the roots for an addition. It's an additional cost. Some of them, sometimes it's pretty expensive. But what microniza does, it's like a mushroom, and mushrooms break down organic material and release the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and the potash naturally rather than adding fertilizers. And so your trees will do much, they're finding that the trees will do much, much better. So pawpaws, you need 2 trees from You can't graft them. If you know somebody that's got a pawpaw patch like I do, you can't go in there and dig them up because those will never produce pawpaws. They'll grow, but they'll never produce pawpaws.
They're male and female.
And it's not even so much male and female, but it's two different non-cloned trees. They have to be from two different seeds.
Two different seeds.
And otherwise you'll get very diminished, or no, if you dig up the plant and transplant rather than if you dig up the mother plant, you'd be okay. But if you dig up any of those suckers, you'll never have pawpaws.
Because that's a technically cloned plant. Okay. Wow, I learned a lot today.
I did too.
We're out of time, and there's so many more questions that I have to ask. So thank you guys both for coming in today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of
We
fun.
will make sure that we get Jim's bird feeder instructions on our website, on our social media accounts. If you have a question for any of our panelists about anything, pests, seeds, where to get things, how to do things, send us an email to yourgarden@gmail.com, or you can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We will see you next time. Thanks so much for watching. Good night.